And right now, let's go back live right now to the TTC's Davisville car house. Again, this is where all three levels of government are taking questions from reporters.
And, we haven't been given the details yet. And, I can't help but look at the Ottawa LRT inquiry. Justice Horgan says the public has the right to receive, quote, regular and honest communications from the government. So my question's this. Will you commit to asking Ontario government staff or Metrolinx staff to provide a technical briefing about what specifically is holding up this project so the public and reporters can get further information, something that's regularly done at all levels of government? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I know that people are so frustrated by this project. It's been going on for a very long time. We inherited this project from the previous government. And there are technical issues that still need to be worked out. And you mentioned Justice Horgan's report, and he put forward over 100 recommendations on what went wrong with the Ottawa LRT. And one of the things that he pointed out is trying to rush a project before it's safe to open. And so we want to make sure that both Crosslinx and Metrolinx work out those technical issues. We all want it to open as soon as possible. Our government has been clear with Metrolinx and Crosslinx. We want it to open as soon as possible. People are frustrated, but they deserve a system that is that operates well and that operates safely when it does. And that has been our focus since the beginning.
Thank you. Next question. Do you want to? Oh, yeah, you can use that mic.
Hi, good morning. This is for Minister LeBlanc, and if you don't mind answering in English and in French, please. Yesterday, Health Minister Duclos suggested there's been more progress made on healthcare reforms than the premiers are willing to admit publicly. Is he right? Has there been a breakthrough, but for political reasons no one wants to say?
Je vais commencer en français. Moi, je suis entièrement d'accord avec mon collègue, le ministre Duclos, et j'espère que ma collègue, la ministre Freeland, sera d'accord aussi. Nous avons des discussions encourageantes avec les provinces. Nous partageons énormément d'objectifs en commun. Nous nous sommes engagés d'investir davantage dans un système de soins de santé publique. Il s'agit de trouver la meilleure façon pour s'assurer qu'on a des résultats, que les patients, leurs familles, les gens qui travaillent dans le système de santé s'attendent de nous tous. Moi, je ne pense pas.
I don't believe, and I don't share this cynical idea that we're waiting, that we're doing announcements for political reasons. We're not at all at the step of an agreement, but I believe we're on the path that's going to bring us, I hope, to an agreement, because we recognize the importance of this question. And yesterday I had dinner in Toronto here with the Prime Minister of Newfoundland and Labrador, and it was part of the discussion. I spoke with the Nova Scotian Premier as well. So these are discussions that are ongoing and are more and more positive.
I obviously share Jean-Yves Duclos' view that we are seeing in the conversations with provinces and territories around the healthcare system some very encouraging discussions. We have made clear, and the Prime Minister has made clear, and the Finance Minister, that we're prepared to increase federal support for public health care. We recognize the vital importance to Canadians of an accessible, world-class public health care system. We've also said that as we look to increase federal investments, we want to ensure that we obtain the results together, collectively, as governments, that Canadians expect of their healthcare system: better access, a world-class healthcare system that, frankly, Canadians should be proud of. I'm encouraged by the conversations we've had. I had dinner with Premier Fury of Newfoundland and Labrador in Toronto yesterday. We obviously talked about this, spoke to the Premier of Nova Scotia. These are ongoing conversations. I know the Prime Minister, of course, was with Premier Ford earlier this week. So I think we're in a place where we can continue to do the important work Canadians expect of us, and I'm not pessimistic at all about the results of our collective efforts.
My follow-up is to Minister Freeland, and again, English and French, if you don't mind. Because there's no First Ministers meeting, should we assume your next budget won't be factoring in larger or long-term increases in health transfers?
I would urge people not to make any assumptions about our next budget. We have started the work, obviously, on planning it. When it comes to healthcare and federal investments in our really important and really strained healthcare system, my colleague, Minister LeBlanc, has put it very, very well, that the federal government is working closely, and I would say effectively, with our provincial and territorial partners. We understand that Canadians are really worried and frustrated and frightened, actually, in many parts of the country about the state of the healthcare system. And we know that we need to work together to make it better. The federal government is committed to doing that. And yes, that does mean some more investment, but it also means a focus on being sure we get the results that Canadians quite rightly expect of us from those investments. Alors,
so today, I'm not here today to make announcements for the next year's budget, but I can repeat what my colleague Minister LeBlanc has said eloquently, is that we are currently working on a very important issue of healthcare around Canada, and when Minister LeBlanc said we now have, from another point of view, from our point of view, constructive and productive discussions, the federal is very clear. We understand the frustrations and concerns of all Canadians. We agree that we need to work together to improve healthcare. We are going to do it. We are going to invest more. But we also understand that for Canadians, the important thing is not the level of investments. The important thing are results. And we are absolutely convinced that we can and we should do more. And like Minister LeBlanc said, I am optimistic. We all understand at the end of the day that this is an important issue, and we're currently working together for results. Thank you.
This is for Mayor Toure. Since Minister Mulroney didn't really give a clear answer, I want to reiterate the question from my colleague about the TTC line over in Scarborough and Eglinton Crosstown LRT. It's clearly over budget. There's allegations that Metrolinx doesn't actually have a clear plan. The people want answers. Will there be a public inquiry?
Well, myself, I don't think a public inquiry is the answer. I think the answer is to get on with getting it finished. And, when it was suggested to me yesterday that Metrolinx doesn't have a plan, I'm sure they do. But I think it is time for greater transparency of the fact there is a plan, some greater specific information with respect to the dates involved with those plans, and what the financial consequences might be. But I know when I came to office 8 years ago, the Spadina University subway line was in a similar situation where they said it might be years before it was finished. And I, at that time, in conjunction with the then CEO of the TTC, called in some people who were specialists in taking projects that had problems and sorting the problems out and getting it finished. And we got it finished years ahead of when they told us it was going to be finished. In this case, we're not years away from this being finished. We don't know exactly when it's going to be, but the answer is it must be as soon as possible. I think public inquiries, generally speaking, in instances like this, only are good for lawyers. Because you'd have squads of lawyers over there asking questions, and there's nothing wrong with asking questions, but I don't think it's going to solve any kind of a problem in the short term. I think the focus should be on applying every possible resource, including additional outside experts if necessary, to sort out the issues and get this done so that people can be riding on it in the short term, which I think is probably the approach that's being taken.
Absolutely. My follow-up here, considering there's been roughly about $1 million proposed from the federal and province for the new Bloor-Yonge extension, or rather capacity improvements, I'm sure people want to know exactly where is that money going to? How will the capacity be improved? I know a lot of people want to see blockades on trains to stop trespassers on the tracks. It's a big problem for delays on the TTC for daily commuters. Is that something that will be part of these improvements?
Well, I think most of the money, and I indicated what the specific projects were that make up the bulk of this investment, investment, which is to expand the platforms. Right now, when you go to Bloor and Yonge, and I am often there, the platforms are narrower than should be the case for crowds of the size that are using that station, hundreds of thousands of people every day. So if you look, the main Bloor-Yonge platform on the University-Yonge subway line is going to be expanded, as will alterations be made to the Bloor-Danforth subway platform below that. And of course, all of that involves tremendous alteration of buildings. It involves underground infrastructure that has to be changed, and some of that work and a lot of the design work has already been done to facilitate the investment of $1.5 billion. It will make a difference because it will be safer, which I think has got to be our top priority, but it will make a difference as well because when you have people moving on and off the trains faster, you can move more trains through the station. And that, together with the huge investment our governments collectively have made in the automatic train control system, will see a very significant increase in capacity. The automatic train control system already is increasing the capacity of the Yonge University Spadina line by 20%, and this will make additional capacity available as well as safer platforms. So it sounds like a lot of money to alter platforms, but we're talking major underground infrastructure here, and for all the expansion you do, you often have to move hydro and other kinds of other infrastructure that is already in the ground, and so that's the work that will get done.
Hello, this one's for Mayor Tory as well, for my first one. You mentioned it earlier, just the stabbing yesterday at the High Park Station. So you did mention that you want to sit down with all parties to find a solution. I'm just wondering what kind of concrete measures you can take immediately, really, to make the TTC safer.
Well, one of the things we've done, and this, we should remember, I mean, the TTC, and this is not to be complacent about what happened yesterday, it was a horrific event, and it was a tragedy, and so I don't underestimate that at all. But the TTC remains a very safe system that moves millions of people every day safely. And we've already taken measures in the past and even in the current circumstance to increase the presence of different kinds of people, special constables, streets to homes, outreach workers, police officers on the system, and that kind of work will continue. There's also discussion at the present time about having some additional resources that will be in the budget for next year to enhance that presence, that physical presence on the system. Those discussions were underway before this terrible incident, and we will continue with those discussions. I will sit down next week with the police chief and with the CEO of the TTC to discuss what else we can do. I do want to comment, though, on two other matters, because I think they're very much related, not necessarily to this particular case, but to the broader issue of safety on the TTC. The first is mental health. We simply have to do a better job. And I spoke to the Prime Minister directly about that in the meeting the big city mayors had with him on Tuesday of this week. I met on Wednesday with the Minister of Mental Health for the provincial government, and we are dropping the ball on this. We're dropping the ball collectively, but most of it is part of the healthcare system. And a lot of what people tell me, including a big meeting I had with employers this week talking about people coming back to work, is that the presence of people who have mental illness, and this is not blaming them, they are victims and they are people who have an illness and they're not getting properly looked after in our system, the healthcare system. And we simply have to step up and make sure that we start to make the investments so those people have somewhere to go other than wander up and down subway cars, which is what happens. And they scare people and they make people anxious. And we have to do better than that. And the second is the state of the law. I mean, the law has, and I'm not saying this is in any way connected to yesterday, but it's connected to the general issue of safety on the TTC. There are still people who commit violent acts who shouldn't be walking the streets. And I've talked about this repeatedly, but I'll talk about it again just because I have the opportunity to do so in response to a terrible tragedy and in the presence of my colleagues in public life. I mean, we have to address the bail laws in this country and address why there are so many people that have proven records of endangering others or a multiple number of allegations outstanding against them in respect of things like guns. And we have to improve the sentencing laws to just make sure that people who are repeated offenders are not able to do that kind of thing on the transit system or anywhere else. It's just part of a broader issue of violence in the city that, you know, some areas of the record have improved this year, others have not. And I don't really care because until it gets down to zero, I can't be satisfied that we're doing everything we can or that we're in a satisfactory state in terms of safety in the city. So we'll continue to work at it, and that will be reflected to some extent as well in the budgets that will come forward in the new year.
Mayor Tory, my follow-up is
We've been listening to Toronto Mayor John Tory speak at the TTC Davisville Car House, where, among other things, a more than $500 million investment has been dedicated to the improvement for the Bloor-Yonge station.